Well, good morning. Well, it's morning here in the valleys of South Wales, but good day to you wherever you may be, whether it's morning, evening, afternoon, night time. You're most welcome here to join me in my little arty corner of the internet. My name's Angela. I like to draw. I draw for a living and I draw for pleasure, and the two usually overlap considerably, it has to be said. It's a rather frosty, damp start to the morning here in the valleys of South Wales. And I say frosty, damp start because there is frost out there, but it's sort of like beginning to disappear and it's grey. So there's that hint of mist in the air. No sunshine today. So if you watched yesterday's video, there is some chance of me knocking my camera over, but not as much as there was yesterday because I won't have to deal with sunshine. So I'd like to say thank you to everybody who has subscribed to my channel, and an equally big thank you for those who have liked my videos. Every little bit helps in getting my videos to people who perhaps they would find them helpful and useful, and ways of helping them to think outside the box and believing in themselves that they can draw. So it is the 18th of January today, and today's pattern fragment, fragments, they're being treated as fragments, is a lovely tangle pattern called Moonberry, and it's another delightful one by Debbie New CZT, who is one of the 3 CZTs who runs the 7F5R Challenge Facebook group and the 7F5R website and studio out in Singapore. So this one has been inspired by blueberries. So I'm going to draw it step by step for you today. So I am going to start by drawing the shape of a blueberry, and then we're going to do that little twiddly bit they have on the top, which is done by doing a sort of curvy 5-point star and then just running an aura around it. So that's the original version of this. This is going to be interesting, isn't it? Because we all have this stuck in our head, oh my gosh, it's a blueberry. Yes, to begin with, but can we vary it? Oh yes, of course we can. But I'm going to stick with circles for a moment because I've put that in the top corner, so we can pop this anywhere we like, and we can make that inside shape as thick or thin as we like. And by moving it, it gives us other possibilities. I'm going to run lines out from where that star dips, and suddenly we get something that looks less like a blueberry, unless you've put a case of macrame around it to hold it as it's precious, or wire wrapped it, and more like a sea urchin, which is always fun to have, and especially if we make this particularly titchy and tiny in the middle. I'm going to put a circle around instead of auraing it, and create that kind of shape, and then just pop some circles in for a very simple sea urchin. Okie dokes, that's one variation. Now instead of starting by drawing the circle, let's start by drawing the inside, which I think is the way that Debbie deconstructs it over on 7F5R's website. And instead of doing that, let's pop some radiating lines out, roughly equal lengths. It's not important if they are or not. And I'm going to do some from these as well. And join them with curves to create very stylized petal shapes, not very even. But we've now got a flower, which is rather fun. I think it's rather fun. Okay, I'm going to go back to drawing a circle, and I'm going to do the usual centre. Don't know if you've ever drawn that kind of star. Some people have and some people haven't. I'll do it up here. That's the first stroke, then down to make an upside down V. Then you go across this way, horizontal to the other side, and then you join where you started to where you just finished. And you can colour it in. If you draw it small enough, you don't have to colour it in. So that's what I've done, just in case you don't know how to do that. Now I'm going to aura this, but instead of having lines going out, I'm going to pop in some little curved triangle shapes. And I had intended to curve the shape of them in keeping with the curvature of the surface of the blueberry. So if you imagine, which way would your finger go if you pulled it in those directions across a blueberry as you look at it? That's how I tend to think of it. My finger would go that way around. So that's quite fun. Colouring it in gives it a different feeling. I coloured them in simply because I wanted that. No, not because I wanted the contrast, but because I'd made a mistake in the shapes I wanted. So I'll put that bottom one in curved like that. This side will curve that way. This one will curve perhaps a little less. And there we go. So that's a different way of doing that. So that's quite fun. I haven't really deviated too much from this original shape other than I've popped it in the middle. So let me pop it out on the edge like with the original one, and let's pop some of these lines in there. A bit more challenging in some ways, and you end up with something that really does look like a strange blown up beach ball with a little blob on the top. Still having my morning tea. And of course, the one thing I haven't done really is to take this original shape in the aura to continue to aura this shape. And you know what I'm going to do, don't you? We're going to do some diva dancing with it, because you could just fill the whole space in with auras of that first little starry aura starred motif. But I do have a bit of a thing about diva dance. I don't know how I came to love it so much. I think it's because it's such a versatile kind of pattern. I've been using it. I'll show you this. This is my current piece of art. I think I finished it this morning. And if you spot the diva dance, I've done it here, and it's almost like hair. And this one's got no ends to it. It's like strands of whatever just laid down, rather than having it either spiraling or joining to edges. This one I actually used it as auras, and I deliberately didn't finish the ends off, and I quite like that. I'll post this one later. Perhaps I've got others to post. That I need to do something with these, and there's a couple of bits and bobs I may do. But spot the tangle pattern fragments I've been using. I'm trying to get them in, some of them, into my artwork. Make use of them as well. So there we are. So I've only done part of it with Diva Dance, but I quite like that. It's quite fun. Okay, let's have a look at something that's a bit more circular. So if I make this really ginormous here, well, relatively ginormous, I don't normally draw so big, then that looks like a rock with a hole in the middle. It's a very, very small blueberry with a very big bit on its end. This is the end where the flower would have been. Yeah, and you get that curvy kind of hole round it. But here we've made it more like star shaped. So it does look like that, or it could look like a rock that has a hole in the middle of it. This is a tangle pattern I've seen. I think it's called Star Rock or Moon Rock, something like that. So, and I particularly like this. I like simple things inside circles in some way. Okie doke, so I'm just going to stop and take, I say stop, not for long, thinking, any more? The other variants I can think of would be filling these in with patterns or filling this in with patterns. Oh, as I moved my pen then I went, oh yeah, that'd be fun. Let's do a little one of these. And we could create lines like this. These are the contour lines of a sphere, so that's quite fun in a different kind of way. And if I pop something like this in, which is similar to what we were, is that right, Bale's rice shape. And I'm going to pop the circle of a seed in there, or berry, and I'm going to put a teeny tiny version of that in there using a finer pen. So that's another way of it's combining tangle fragments, but it's another way of using this particular fragment. So that's quite cute actually, and I will just thicken that line a little bit, and I'll also do the same on one side. So it does look like it's trapped inside a little bit. Perhaps let's do cross hatching instead of straight lines like that. So there's that one, and that leaves more possibilities. So that's quite interesting as well. An interesting idea and something to work with. Let me look at this. So if I draw this first and use it as the top of a circle, then we draw it like this. It's very much like a poppy seed head, a very stylized one. They tend to have quite solid stems on them. So that would work. We just pop the stem in. So that is taking this and just changing it just that little bit, and we get that. And of course, if you draw that shape almost like it's been squashed flat, I'll take a pencil and I'm going to draw this circular shape in, but instead of drawing a circle, I'm going to use that as a guide for my petals of a flower. So that works quite nicely. And the one thing I didn't do with it somewhere in the middle of a circle, which is what I'll do now, is who says we just have to stick with one of them, one of these central pieces. I like stars. Perhaps pop some little orbs in between them to fill in some of those gaps. And then we'll draw a wobbly circle around it, because why not? Deliberately drawing wobbly shapes takes away that pressure of trying to make something perfect. It's a deliberate action, and it's, you know, whatever you draw is meant to be that way. And I always feel that it looks more natural, more genuine. This is a kind of motif I use most often, but usually in the middle. Instead of putting stars, I put those kinds of shapes. And you can see that. I'm sure have I got some in here? I'm sure I did some in here. I didn't. It must have been another drawing I was doing, because I have many, don't forget. But it's similar to that. And these little circles just help to make that kind of blob in the middle. Of course, it would make the nice centre for a flower as well. So let's have a look at how we can do that. So I've used 1 for the centre of a flower. This time I'm going to use 3 because they are quite big. But it depends on how big you want to draw that flower. If you want to draw a huge flower, well, you can add more of these. Again, I'm going to fill in the spaces between them and create something that's a bit more spherical using orbs. And then I will draw a rough circle around it so that I can add my petals. Or I could leave the orb shape empty around it. It's entirely your choice what you do, but it's a nice way to build up a flower. And of course you can add things to the centres of these. I quite like a simple stamen, but you could add a little loop in there in some way. If we add a hump here, it looks like we've got a pointy leaf that's curled over. So there's all kinds of things you can do just with simple petals as well. And make them wider, narrower, have a wavy top, a straight top, a curved shot, stop out in between, alternately thin and wide petals. And just go with the flow. This one, I do like this. It's really quite sweet. Okay. Let me have a look. I'm going to draw a big rice shape here, because yes, I could pop this somewhere in the middle, which I think I'll do actually. And just draw this in, which is interesting, but it's more interesting if we add these aura lines like this, and possibly going from the points as well. So that's quite an interesting kind of thing. Just thickening those lines that are to the left and underneath of that star shape, just to give it a bit of thickness. The same can be said over here of this one. If I think of to the left and bottom, the left and bottom, 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 and a little bit there, then it gives it that feeling. I've done it quite heavy-handedly because of the pen, but it gives it that feeling of being thicker. So not wafer thin, but has some body to it, is what I want to say. So that's quite nice, but you know me, can't possibly leave it with just one variation on a shape. Just pop it on the outside edge, and then we get a different kind of feeling. And I will just pop these lines in like so. Oh, there's one there. Just go back and split them all. There we go. So that makes a completely different kind of thing. And I think I would want to, sorry, we're going to butt up against that circle, is create a C curve, well, backward C in this case, but a C curve going around the bottom. And then it looks like it could be a sea anemone with all its things inside it, or perhaps a strange kind of barnacle. So that's quite fun. So that lends itself then to, that moves me on in thinking to perhaps having this on a semicircular dome shape. Like that. And that could form part of a whole host of them at the bottom of a wreath almost. There we go. Instead of putting lines in, let's pop some elongated circles in for texture and pattern, like that. So that's possible as well. I didn't pick that one up, or this easily, until I did this. I could have from this, but my mind was set on botanical kinds of things there, rather than things of a marine origin. So that's quite interesting. Okay, I'm going to go back to this rice shape and draw another one. And perhaps pop my aura is going to have that line in, that's the only problem here, but it's okay. How would this work here? Would this work? Yeah, pop one. We could also pop one at each end. So let me do one there. And one down. Oops, I wanted to do one with, it'll work fine. So let me just create auras that will join these two together. So we end up with something that looks, well, it doesn't just look, it is a rice shape. So I wanted that point at the bottom, but that would be interesting. In fact, it could be interesting to stack these. I'm going to pop 4 together. Their auras are going to overlap, which is fine by me. They'll look like they're tucked under each other, and that's fine. But then we've got that option of adding in that shape this kind of way as well. So that's a bit of fun. Okay. Yeah. Can't think of much else to do with that. Semicircle shapes, it's the same kind of thing as we would have if I add another one to this collection. You can add stripes around, and I could spend ages doing variations of these with narrower stripes that are closer together, that are further apart, that alternate wide, narrow, that have broken lines in them, or that we cross cross-hatching could be done to help with the shape, especially with shadows. But and alternating black and white. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add instead of solid black. This isn't my usual way of doing it, but I know plenty of people do add these darker lines with this feathery edge, and I will make the very outside edge quite black but still have that feathered in, so we don't have a harsh line. There we go. So that helps with that kind of feeling of rotundity. It's a good word. All right, let's get on to the more difficult things for such an organic kind of shape. I think it is just getting out of it that we're not doing a blueberry. We're using the idea of this central motif to work from within a shape. So I've put a 5-pointed star in here, and as it is, that it's okay, it's fine, it works-ish, but I think with a square, I think a 4-pointed star would work better. And I think I'd put a dot in the middle, and then I'd work around that dot to give myself a 4-pointed star. And the aura is where you can round that shape. Or you could keep the sharp points. So that would be my square analogue of the blueberry. It's like if you wanted to fit as many as you could into a square box, you'd want square blueberries. I don't know if you remember ever seeing how, I'm not sure if they still do it, but somewhere in the world, like watermelons were grown in square-shaped moulds. So you got square-shaped watermelons, so they could be stacked and displayed easily. The watermelons didn't mind growing that way. They just forced them into a particular shape and a uniformity of size as well, which was interesting. And years ago, going back to, I don't know, late 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, companies in Holland and elsewhere that produced gin would put them into specifically shaped gin bottles, which were practically square. They had a curved top and things, but they were square and narrowed down to the base a little bit, but had a square cross section, because you could fit them easily into crates for shipping, and you could get more of them into a crate, and the square shape gave more capacity than a circular would. So for the same size bottle, you could get more gin into it, you know, sort of same height and width as a circular bottle. If you had a square one, I think you have more volume. Well, that's what I understand. Now, scientifically, I'm not sure that makes sense, because I'm not that good at maths, but that's the case, and they're still found these days. They're not made anymore, not unless they're made for a particular reason, but they're found, you know, sort of like in rubbish dumps and in rivers and seas and so on, where they would have been just dumped at one time. The Thames foreshore and so on. So there you are. So I just had a different way of drawing a star shape there. So instead of doing those, the dot and the V shapes, I just put a cross in the middle and then thickened the lines, made them more triangular shaped, and then auraed them. And of course, just as I've done with the blueberry at the top, I can also add lines, and then adding these V shapes does create quite an interesting possibility for patterns. I'm not going to spend ages colouring these in, So I'm going to use lines instead to darken them. But that brings something that's quite nice there, I think. Okay. The possibility again, you double auras, circle there, things like, there's my star. I'm going to aura it like this. So I could put orbs in the corner and attach a double line there, I suppose. Need to draw that shape a lot better and more central, but you get the idea. There's all kinds of things that you can do there. This is just one of many, I'm sure, as well as using a bigger number of auras to really bring the focus on this shape. Oh, I'm so resisting the urge to diva dance like this, and then tether them to the corners. And you could tether these, but I think the corners are the best, because if you want to tether into these dips, they're going to be at different places around there. So if this is going to be repeated into a pattern, then these would be awkward to continue. Okay, so what about a really big one of these? It can be interesting to create that star shape from, but we can do it. And if we aura this, how is it going to aura? Well, it will. And that on its own would make an interesting repeating pattern. In fact, I'm sure I've seen this as a tangle pattern. And with all of these, of course, we can do that star shape in the middle. Which I've done quite quickly in this case. They need to be a bit broader, which we can do. Instead of pointing towards the corners, we can have them pointing towards the sides. And again, with this one, we could have them tethered to the corners instead of at the points. Stars. So that again gives a different feel. It looks almost like an envelope seal. Okay, offsetting this and doing the same kind of thing is always possible. So I'm going to just do a simple cross and aura it that way to give me that shape. And I could do this and that. That makes an interesting pattern. Not sure it works, but just with those number of lines anyway. So let's have a look if I perhaps do it a little bit further away from the corner. And I've gone from drawing a distinct star shape to just leaving it as a cross. So I'll put the diagonals in first, but then I'll put these in, and then just split all of these into half. So it gives that kind of nice, interesting shape. Okay, triangles next. I'm sure there's a lot more possibilities for squares. I quite like it off-centered. Oh, just thinking. Something else we could do with this kind of shape is to combine it with this variation of well, or at least something that's like well. I think this is more like the construction is more like a tangle pattern called Buttercup, I think it is, but where we put petals inside the square and then use that as the repeating pattern. So instead of a circle in the middle, we've got this star shaped, which I will make just a little bit more like a star there. So that as a variation is quite nice as well. Okay, I'm going to aura around the inside of my triangle here. And for this one, I think I would pop in a 3-pointed star, because why not? It's a Y, it's like a Y in shape. So I've got the legs of it pointing towards the corners. I'll aura it. And of course, it's the same kind of idea. We can leave it like that. We can make it much bigger. So I will do the aura around so that we have perhaps lines like this, and perhaps that shape is what becomes in there, more like a flower. So that works quite nicely. And we know that whatever we can do in a square or a circle, we can do in a triangle. So I'm going to do the next one though with this shape, with the corners pointing at the edges of the triangle. And I haven't centered that very well, but we get a little flower with a dark triangle behind it, because these do look like little flowers. There are three petaled flowers. The ones I know are trillium, and they've got more of a pointed petal, so that's possible to do, but it's the same kind of idea. That quite works nicely. Yeah, that would work. Different variation. The way to get this centralized is to work out where these lines would meet and pop it there. I say pop it there is to pop this here. Let me do it this way again, and this time I will take this out to meet the edges, and I'm going to aura it this way instead, so there's no outer border. Just leave that. So that is my favourite of these, and I'm glad I carried on with that extra variation. I do like that, and I like it with these left as they are, because they could be filled with colour or with shadow then, but that's quite nice. There we go. And to take this one step further, a hexagon, so that's about the centre of the hexagon. So I am going to draw a 6-pointed star here. And I will make it a bit more star shaped than I did, than perhaps I would have done originally. Because I don't mind just the lines there, to be honest, they work. And then we can do the same as we've done with others. I'm going to doubly aura this one in this case, just to get it a bit wider. And let's have a look at drawing another hexagon behind it. The easiest way to do this really would be to draw this in pencil first so you've got an idea of where you're going to go, but that works. There we go. So we've got that. So it's akin to this, but we've got a 6-fold symmetry. Okay. Polygons. Well, wherever you put this, it's going to work in a polygon. So like that, or I'm tempted to put like a line of them to echo that shape, I suppose. And then just a couple of lines there. Not very well done, but you get the idea. Is using this idea actually. Could use that as a border. And I am going to use the pencil lines, to keep the size of my auras consistent. So I'll have them touching and so on. So we could make use of that as a border, which is quite fun. And you could have it quite organised like that, or do another border. Fill them quite randomly. And as a background pattern. So I'm doing the 5-pointed ones, which do end up looking a bit like little flowers on their own. But it's this little motif that makes that what it is. So taking loads of them there. And of course another border could be, you just pop one here then, or we make use of these shapes and we fit them in, but turn them into little blueberries by adding those bits to them. And I would have them even outside of the border like this, partially through in this case, but you could also fit them in side by side. I haven't done much in the way of borders, have I, for all of this? I think this is the first pattern we've done, I think, where there is this separate shape within a shape that you can take advantage of. So they'd work like that, but you could also have them going up, down, and so on. There's a lot that can be done with this to create a pattern, I'm sure. Okay, other shapes. Let's go with one of these crazy ones. Well, of course, that's going to work just as it is in the middle. But another crazy kind of shape. Let's put a whopping great big one in the middle. And it would look, if it's shadowed, like we're looking through a gap in the paper to a starry sky. And again, with this one, we can add tethering lines in. Like this. Or carry on auraing, or doing anything else that we have done. Filling this gap with smaller versions. Or even, you know, filling that space with some of these just peeking out. So if we've got a pile of blueberries in the hole, as it were. Just put a couple of those in because I can. There we go. All right. Any other shapes? Let me do a squashed shape, squashed oval, squished blueberry, and then we could actually have it in this kind of crystal or pipe shape like the cubine variation that was done. But I think it'd be really fun to take one of the square variations and do that. So we've got a square berry. Okay, and if I pop this in, there we go. So something like that would be fun. Teardrop shape. Where do you want to put the star? I think I'd rather like mine swinging at the bottom. Like a little pendant with a star on. Or draw the star first and then draw the teardrop shape in. Or magic pencil, teardrop shape, get our star positioned where we want it, and then draw this in so it looks like that teardrop is going through it. And we could actually have a whole host of them round there. In fact, that would be fun if it's done as a... I'm running out of space. So if I put a ring in, like the original one, we could have lots of these around the ring to create like a wreath. Which is really quite sweet. I've said that a lot today. That's really quite sweet. I do have a bit of a passion for blueberries, it has to be said. I haven't bought any for a while. They're not so easy to find fresh here at the moment in the UK. There's all kinds of nonsense going on. And popped to a supermarket yesterday and I was shocked at how many gaps there were on the shelves of things. So I know full well what's causing it, but yeah. So blueberries would be lovely to have. I should have to keep my eye open for them. So there we are. So that's a page full. I will just take a few minutes to add some shadow to some of these because that looks almost like a cupcake, doesn't it? It does. It looks like a very tall, thin cupcake. So I'll pop this in as a possibility for just a very simple. So I've done a star at the top, almost like a semicircle, a wavy curvy line there. I'll bring it down to my shelf here and pop in cupcake shape. So there we are, we've now got a blueberry and a cupcake. So I sometimes wonder myself about my mind. Over here in the UK, we used to have cakes that were very much shaped like cupcakes, but were much smaller, and they were called fairy cakes. And I'm sure people still make them at home. I haven't really looked for cake cases for a long time, but cupcakes are a lot bigger. And the fairy cakes used to be iced on top, and they'd have decorations on them. They'd have different flavours, all sorts. So I'm just adding some shadowing to some of these very quickly. You can see where I've put them, and how get to work. I'm just using the same charcoal pencil. Charcoal, it's not charcoal, it's a soft pastel, chalk pastel, Carbothello brand from Stabilo. It's a grey. It's not the blue grey one that I favour, but it's a grey. It's a cool grey. So cool greys have got an element of blue in them. Warm greys have got elements of red or orange. This particular border, I think I'd put shadow in between them. Not the starry bits themselves, perhaps. There we go, so that'll work. And this one, put the top and bottom and leave a highlight in the middle. These would have shadows where they overlap, as well as on themselves. So the left and bottom is where I put the shadows, but I'll put drop shadows where they overlap just to help bring that out and shadow the background as well. So there's that one. Okay, this one, I want it looking like it's a hole. So that means some shadow all the way around the outside edge. And trying to keep it mostly there. But we do need to bring that shadow in just a bit, just to that feeling. And with this one, I'm going to pop some shadow underneath this star in the middle. Perhaps just some around the bottom edge here, just to put that into shadow. Okie dokes. This one, definitely around the inner edge. Of Blueberry City underneath. It's a blueberry mine. That's what it is. We're mining for blueberries, not coal or gold. Although I'd much prefer a big pile of fresh strawberries to a pile of coal or a pile of gold. Yes, it's true. I don't covet gold or anything like that, really. But blueberries, The next time I brave a supermarket store, I'm going to have to check and see if they have blueberries. Though this time of year, fresh blueberries are hellishly expensive. You can get frozen ones, which are just as lovely and work beautifully with something like yogurt or in cooking. Not that I bake cakes. So if I did, if there's only me here, I'd live on cake for days, which is not good for me. So I don't. So there we are. So there's that one. Just this shadow, this shading just brings things out, doesn't it? Just that little bit brings them to life. It's like colour in the colouring pages or templates that I do, the colouring books I do. So adding colour is what brings the templates to life and makes them look, well, yeah, I love to see how people approach them. Okay, so with this one I want to get the shape of this to enhance that feeling of orbularity. That's not a word, I've just made it up. Orbishness, sphericity. I'm going to add a bit there, but I'm also going to add a little bit on the bottom of this one. And I'm going to pop some on the outside edges as well to help those feel like they're fading, not fading away, but bending away from us. So plenty on the outside edge and just fade it up, but to leave a highlight at the top. So that works quite nicely. This one is the outside edges again, but I do want to get some shadow underneath that at the top and then at the bottom, but leaving that area of highlight as well. Okie dokes. Anything else that would be good to show some shadowing on? Okay, with this one I'm going to put some shadows along underneath the top inner, this inner line, the top and the right one, and inside the right. And then I'll add some shadow underneath this star by putting shadow to the bottom and the left of each shape, each leaf, so where it is. So that gives a feeling this is set back. And especially if I do something like pop some, really could do with sharpening my chalk pastel. Perhaps having a sharper edge, but it'll be fine. I'm putting shadow there and it does give it that feeling of having a raised border around it. Okay. If I go back to the original one, let's just pop some shadow underneath that bit, and then here. If you leave a little highlight around the edge, or keep the shadow lighter right on the very edge where the shadow is darkest, it gives a feeling of something called reflected light, which reflects from a surface, and it actually helps in giving that feeling that something is believably spherical. Next time you look at something on a surface, just look at that and you can see that little rim of light. And there's all kinds of theories about how you colour that light, and it should contain some of the colour of the reflected surface in somebody, but we're using one colour, so I'm just leaving it just that little bit lighter. Are there any others I'm desperate to? This one, I think I would add a shadow underneath the deviantArt section, just to help make it feel quite, to bring it out compared to the other parts. Is that sometimes shadow is used for dimension, and sometimes it really does help the shadow. It really does help separate out the parts of a fragment or a pattern, a motif. And again, I've left a highlight at the bottom, just a little bit there. And I am going to add a tiny bit of shadow around this bit at the top as well, because that will help to separate that from the little bit of deviantArt we got going. So there. So I think that's as much as I want to do with you today. I'm just going to push this up a bit so we can see it all. So a page full of Moonberry variations, and we've got a star in the middle of these, but you could equally put a moon shape or any other shape. I've varied the number of points on the star, but thinking about it, stars, moons, could have done a moon instead. And I have got a moon shape in the form of crescent moon, but we could have done, got half moons, full moons. So yeah, so I'll just say thank you ever so much for joining me. I hope you found this interesting and that it will inspire you, help you to have a go at doing these and creating your own variants. I know which my favourites are, I think. Actually, there's quite a lot on here I really like. I know which ones I'm not that fussed on, but sometimes you have to try things to see how they work. And there's no harm in doing that, because you get a better feel for what will work and won't work as you move forward. That's my theory anyway. That's what I'd like to happen. It doesn't always happen with me though. So I'll say thank you. If you've enjoyed, thumbs up. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for everything. Look after yourselves, take care, and take time to be creative. Bye-bye for now. Hoil. Bye.